outstanding gray zone legal issues with respect to these fees and such that she was talking about? I mean, is our county attorney or the attorney general, I mean, I know that there was some indication earlier that any constitutional issues were resolved years ago. Is that true? That was the first question.
Well, I'm not sure what she was referring to there. There was some discussion that going back to the original constitutional history, there was a recognition that the language was about not charging tuition for school. There are 6 grounds under state law that create specific exceptions for things that cannot be charged. The school system is, in fact, reviewing all the fees so that we can make sure that we can justify and explain to our citizens and to our funding body what those fees refer to. And absolutely critical that we ensure that students who cannot afford fees do not pay fees, that the fees are consistent across our schools, so you wouldn't be charged differently in a different school, and looking to bring in line which are the fees that we think are absolutely essential. But the difference, for example, you were talking about, what is critical to the curriculum. Well, I might be able to teach you biology standing at the front of the room and reading from a textbook. But for example, in 7th grade, some students are charged $8 to do a dissection of an owl eye. That's a disposable kind of activity. Once it's used, it can't be used again, and those fees support that kind of interactive, engaging learning. And so we're trying to be careful not to throw out the baby with the bathwater, to carefully review, to make sure that we're not charging. Some of the fees that appeared on the list, for example, were schools that put out anything anticipated they wanted to request permission for possible fees that they didn't end up charging. So there are things that we can clean up. The system is looking at it. A task force was formed, and it's going to be brought to the board before we vote on our operating budget.
Has there been any litigation or a lawsuit filed by a parent challenging any of these on these grounds? I mean, to your knowledge? Okay. The other...
And I would just add that the county PTA has never brought this issue forward in terms of, they survey their PTAs every year about the critical issues.
Now, she mentioned, it's the first I had heard, I hope you say this, it's actually not true, but this idea that if there's arrears for fees that somehow they're posted on some school, I mean, is that true?
I really don't know what that incident refers to, except that I understand that there are times when a high school, for example, might post a list of student ID numbers and ask students to report, for example, to an accounting office. And it may be that they are owing a book that they had in a class. It may be something related to...
Okay, but to your knowledge, there's no posting on school, school grounds of students and families that are, I mean, I see somebody in the back nodding yes. I mean, I guess it's something that it'd be kind of interesting or good for us to know, even if it is a Board of Education issue.
Similarly, because you always want to make sure that you look into it, I was told that there was, apparently at one of our high schools, student names rather than IDs were listed, but the list simply told students to report to an accounting office. So it wasn't a description of families who weren't paying fees.
All right. Are there more questions on the fee issue, which we will have? Oh, okay, because there'll be the bill hearing next week. Senator King.
I'll be at the bill hearing.
Next Thursday. No, just joking.
Can you talk just a little bit about the open budget issue that was brought up also in some of the testimony?
Sure. The school board is required by law to approve procurements of our school system over $25,000. So consequently, at every one of our board meetings, they are listed in our public agenda, which is available on our website the Wednesday before our Tuesday meeting. Board members have to vote. They're listed on the consent agenda, so that if there are no questions, the board may just vote it up and down, but it's a public vote. We raise our hands. People can watch us. They are then reprinted completely in our minutes, which remain in our archives, which you can select on our webcast, which are searchable in written documents. So all of those are clearly made transparent. Our database may not be searchable by a particular item. You'd have to look through them, but it is there for the public to see. My understanding is that the kind of database that the state law referred to is different than the database we used. So there would clearly be financial implications of having to design a new system, particularly in light of the fact that that is made public now in terms of our procurements.
Thank you. Delegate Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shirley, can you tell me, have there ever been any instances in MCPS where graduation tickets have been withheld for failure to pay these fees?
I honestly could not answer that for you because there are different kinds of an obligation. For example, a student who may have broken school property may have an obligation to repay,
But
and that kind of
That's
thing.
not the kind of fees we're talking about here, right?
Right. Right.
Right, okay.
But I don't want to say no one's ever had, the right to participate withheld. It may have been because of, some damage of property that somebody had to pay. To the best of my knowledge, I have not heard of any case where a fee held up a student's
Is there
graduation.
some way you can provide us that information in the next bill hearing? Get us that information for sure, yes or no?
We definitely will be able to, those who've been around longer than I, since I'm finishing my second year, can probably give you a better historical perspective. But I do want to assure you also that the county council did recently have a hearing on the fees, that the school board will be having public discussion of this before our operating budget. So, this is something that will get a full vetting.
Well, but we really would like to get the answer.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Delegate Heller.
Surely the bids are large sometimes, and the resources are distributed to the schools. Do you have those numbers broken out?
I'm sorry, bids for?
Let's say art materials.
We don't have it broken out by school. We're given the total number that the school system is paying for the materials.
That's what I'm saying.
We certainly could request it, but the way it's presented in the procurement is a countywide system.
Yeah, if we're going to have transparency, I think the citizens would like to see it broken out by where it goes school by school.
Well, we try very hard on the board to recognize that they're all our students and all the schools matter, and so